Wardens of Winter, welcome back to Winter Wolf's Den, where the fire is warm, the take's hotter, and the P90s are always locked and loaded. Tonight, we step through the gate into one of Sci-Fi's greatest adventures, Stargate SG-1, a show that delivered legendary episodes of high-stakes action, deep mythology, and Jack O'Neill's finest sarcasm, but also some episodes that felt like they were written by a malfunctioning Malp. From epic battles against the Goa'uld to whatever shenanigans the team was getting into that week, we're breaking down the best and worst of SG-1. So dial in the coordinates, hope the iris is open, and whatever you do, don't let the NID take over. This was a very easy, dude. I feel like all of the worst of picks are coming very highly, air quote, highly regarded. And maybe it's because they're so far down the point list that it's an easy pickup. This is another one that I have a Star Trek TNG comp for. All right. The SG-1 episode is called,
Emancipation.
Season 1, episode 4, right?
Yep.
And my comp was Star Trek: The Next Generation Code of Honor, which I think was season 1, episode 3. Right?
Yep. That was a Worf episode, right?
No, it was the Tasha Yar fighting in gladiatorial combat for the vaccine on the racist African planet episode.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's the comp, because this episode of SG-1 has, I don't remember what her rank is, Lieutenant Carter.
No, Captain. Captain
Carter. That's right.
Yeah, she's
Captain Carter gets kidnapped by a tribe of Mongols on another planet for purposes of trade. And I'm like, okay, so emancipation obviously doesn't just refer to her, it refers to the culture and the patriarchy. And the patriarchy wasn't screwing around in this episode. The patriarchy let some people know a couple times.
Well, their whole culture is based off of the Huns. So you think Genghis Khan, like they're descendants of Genghis Khan and his empire. Number one dictator, Genghis Khan. He is the greatest dictator of all time. Is Genghis Khan. I mean, he populated like 3/4 of the world at the time.
Yeah, it was crazy. But they have this. I can see where this gets the weakest reputation, even outside of the not so veiled kind of racial stereotype stuff. And I'm like, but it's historically based. So, I mean, it's inspired by, so I know it's probably a bad look, I guess, but like culture actually worked like that across the planet for more time in human history than our current progressive, like outlook on life, in the Western world. So, I mean, I can't get butthurt about it. Like I think some people do. Well, that's an unpopular opinion, but you can't.
You have to say that it was culturally accurate to the people that they were representing
of the time, right?
And two, this was one of my nitpicks and sliders as well, is that they come into a new world. They haven't been here before, and they don't do any investigation into the culture, into the life. They just kind of jump in. Now, to give SG-1 its due is that they kind of was tossed into it. When they got there, they heard some yelling. They went and saved a dude's life because he's about to be like dog food. Where they're about to Ramsey him.
Maul, dude. It was on. Yeah. Oh, dude, he Ramseyed. Burp, nice.
So they kind of got thrown into it, but they kind of just assumed. They didn't ask questions like immediately because like the dude they saved, was it Abu was his name or something like that?
Yep. Something like that.
He couldn't look at Carter. He can't look at a woman in public. And she's also not supposed to talk to men or wear men's clothes.
Yep. They were specific on that point.
And that was my nitpick in Sliders. If you go back and check out the Worst of Us, they kind of go into the world and just assume that everything is going to be 90% what they know and have no idea what everything else is going on around them.
Yeah, and I'll give SG-1 a little bit of credit. Like when they get there, they at least have Daniel Jackson, the anthropologist on the team, like asking questions and doing a little bit of research and being like, oh, this might be a cultural thing. We should find out. But then I thought the more interesting character to kind of that they worked with on that was the actual chieftain, who himself who leaned progressive. And only they made a couple of points of that too, where he's like, someday the law of the land will be trade and not war. I'm trying to get us there. I only took the one wife, even though it's expected of me to have multiples. And then Jackson's like, because you love her, right? And he's just like, yeah, but he couldn't say it because he was expected to have multiple spouses for children and things like that.
Which they were also referred to it as the madness.
Right. Instead of love, right? That they had
Yep.
a label for it. But Shang Tsung's in this episode as
Yep.
the bad guy. I
Of
can't remember his
course.
name off the top of my house, off the top of my head, but great performance, dripping with campy villain venom.
Yep.
But even that character had a code of honor,
Yes.
whereby when his daughter violated law, he didn't give her any special treatment. You can argue that
Yep.
the law was bad, but
Yes.
they made a point of saying he has to apply the law to her so everybody knows the system works. That way,
even more. They said even more.
Right. Yep. That there can't be any special treatment, and that when Carter defeats him in single combat at the end of the episode, he makes good on his words. Like, there can be no war between our tribes now. I'm defeated.
Because we also we abided by the law. It wasn't that they fought, but it was abided by the law. So therefore, he can't do retaliation war because he lived by the law himself. So he still had his code, like you said.
Title of the episode, Code of Honor. It's like all these people had
that was
their
the Star
different
Trek
outlooks
one.
on some things. Damn, I'm looking down at his code. That's right, that was Star Trek. Never mind, this was Emancipation. Oh well, cut that part out anyway. But I think on top of the insensitive sugar coating, I guess, of the episode that people would complain about, I was kind of bored by this episode. Nothing really interesting happened except for the setup, and I think at the very end, and not that the fight choreography is particularly interesting or anything, but at least it was a way to wrap up an episode. But I thought the middle really sagged. There was nothing interesting about Carter's journey while she was incarcerated and traded off. The SG team really didn't do anything interesting to track her down. They basically just followed hoof prints.
Yeah.
Like, it looked like a mile down the road to the other camp. I don't know. That doesn't seem like that would be too difficult for me. And then I thought they wisely headed this little angle off. I was like, they're afraid to go into this camp while they're carrying submachine guns and have grenades. Go in there, rat-a-tat-tat, and get Carter and go, right? Save the women and children or whatever. But anybody that pulls the sword's going down. But then they were like, yeah, no, they know you came from my camp, so if you mow them all down and leave one up, they're going to come back and demolish us because they have the numbers.
And he has 22 loyal tribes as well.
Right. They had numbers even if you destroyed everybody here. It's only going to take one person to survive. And I'm like, okay, so they reasoned why. I'm like, okay, and that's I don't think they would have done that in a modern episode. They'd have been like, oh, fuck it, let's just do that. Done.
See, and this is where you did see a lot of the non-modernism in it, because Carter, if you watch her throughout the rest of the series, she could have took down that camp by herself without her gun. She was
on that Spec Ops team because
yeah, she could have easily got out, but yet she still played the part. So it downplayed her character a lot in this in this episode.
A damsel fighter.
And and that's where I think it comes in as a bad episode. One thing I can say good about this episode is that it stayed to its core mostly, and that even its bad episode was well stitched together. And it probably their worst episode is still probably better than a lot of modern day stuff's best episode.
I think we've said that about Sliders and Star Trek the original series as well. But I think there's just something tried and true about the format of these television shows, these cable TV shows before pre-streaming. I'm just going to call it pre-streaming. So whether or not it was on HBO or if it was on Channel 5 back in the day, whatever, just pre-streaming, is that everybody in that writer's room knew the language, that they knew we're set for TV. It has to be 48 minutes. The break's going to come here and here. So you can't have an 8-minute scene that doesn't have a logical breaking point where we can put the commercial in and then pick it up for the resolution later. Like, it all translates very nicely across the screen as it goes. So even if the idea, like I said, I think I said this in the Sliders episode, where if they do 30 episodes a season, you can have a clunker. Be like, hey, we tried one about the Mongol hordes and Carter got kidnapped and was going to get forced married or something. Okay, it was stupid. It didn't work for a lot of people. It was dull, but it still worked like formatically.
Yes.
And so here you are, you still tune in next week to see what O'Neill and the gang get up to.
Yeah. It's not an episode. It's not an episode where you just walk away from the series, when there's been so many here recently that we've watched where we've both almost just walked away and like, nope, we're done. This is over.
Yeah. I'll do it for sure. I mean, for you, it was obviously Ahsoka. You were like, dude, I don't know, man. I can't do it. I think we both felt that way about the Acolyte. I had my moments with Agatha all along. I think I made it to like episode 4 or something like
Yeah,
that.
then
I was
you
like,
made it halfway. Yeah.
about half, whatever the number was. And I was like, dude, I just can't. But in this one, like even just scrolling through, you get a real sense of this too, because when you have it all in front of you and streaming, and you can see the episode descriptions just kind of firing down the line, you can just really just scroll down and be like, oh wait, there's a shootout in the OK Corral, and it's got the SG1 guys. I'll watch that. That sounds kind of dopey, but I'll check that out. And then they got another one that's like O'Neill fights against the clock as he's unconscious, and the rest of the team has to find the cure. You're like, oh, okay, high octane episode, cool, let's do that one. But the serial, like the through lines, the big ones. Oh, I don't know. We got to get ready for the Goa'uld invasion. They just drop a mention of it every 5th episode, and then you get to the end of the season, and then maybe the last couple of episodes are like the big issue that they put to bed. So it's never ruined. It's never wasted. It feels like
they kind of like a show like Criminal Minds, where it's the monster of the week or the unsub of the week type show.
Yeah.
Later down the line, I think starting around season 3 or season 4, they had an outliner, big bad, that was kind of, they were tracking as well through the whole thing. So like they had an overarching story underneath the monster of the week, and that's where you're coming in with like SG1, where they had the Mongol invasions and stuff like that. Is that it's that overarching story underneath the adventure of the week.
I feel like it just gives them wiggle room. It just gives them some play, some leniency to try some stuff out. I think we made the joke before about it just seems like it's like on a Mad Libs wheel where they're like, spin the noun, Mongol horde. All right, what's the plot crisis? Carter gets kidnapped and she's going to be sold into marriage. You know what I mean? And then how do we get out? Everybody realizes that everybody's equal. Like, and they didn't solve for that at the end of the episode either, which I thought was interesting. It's not like they convinced Shang Tsung's tribe that they were wrong and the whole of society needed to be shifted out of that because it was backwards and, women are great and this and everything must be, the Western world of Earth Prime circa 1997.
Yeah.
Like, nah, dude, you beat him in a fair fight. Like, there was no cheating. He didn't try to cheat either, which I thought was kind of cool. He wasn't mustache twirling one-dimensional villain. She just got the drop on him when his sword got stuck and applied like an actual kick him in the face technique, and here we go.
Hey,
and she scored first blood. She scored first blood. Did you catch that?
I actually said that out loud. Scored first blood.
Yep. First blood. No flawless victory here, bitches. She did. She got that. And that was the best part too, is they're like, I wasn't told they were fighting with weapons. And Shang Tsung pulls out the giant scimitar-like sword. And I'm like, she's just standing there in like the fight position. And she's like, nah, combat knife. I'm like, all right, at least it's evened up.
A little K-bar. It's okay.
Okay, she's ready to roll. But in that scene though, that the guys were made to look a little dumb, where like they all have their guns.
Yeah.
And when Shang Tsung pulls his sword and she doesn't pull her knife immediately, like they get the bum's rush and like they get swords drawn on them. And I'm like, dude, I'm in the enemy camp. I'm watching a fight to the death. They showed O'Neill's hand drift down, I think, to his side. No, he'd given the sidearm up at that point.
No, he was playing with the selector level of his weapon.
Is that what it was? But it was on his MP5 at that point, right? Okay. So it was the gun he had. I was like, no, he gave the pistol away earlier.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, dude, I might have had that at like a low ready just in case somebody tried that shit. And I might have not let your sword carrying ass stand within 10 feet of me. Just saying. But it was SG1. And they made their jokes and then they went home. Like that was it. They won the fight. They won the girl because they wanted the chieftain's daughter to come back with them to their tribe so that she could be with original chieftain's son because they were in love, yada yada. But then they just went back through the gate. That was all.
Yeah.
See you next week.
And then on their own oration, they said that we're all equal, and they tore down the women's sector, and they all demasked.
Oh, they did do that?
Yeah, they did that at the very end. But it had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with what SG1. He was leaning that way anyways. He just thought this was the proper moment to do it.
The good guy tribe. I thought you meant Shang Tsung's tribe. I'm like, no, they didn't. What are you talking about?
No, the good guy tribe did that.
Right, like you said, he was already leaning in that direction as like a progressive leader that was looking towards the future economically and socially. He had already done things that he even said, my people think I'm weak because of this, but they'll see I was right. Like it was implied that they'll know this was the right decision for us for prosperity and well-being.
So the as they said, the crux of the episode, the bad guy was really Don, or whatever the archaeologist's name was. It Don Johnson? Daniel.
Daniel Shanks, Michael Shanks, and Daniel Jackson.
Daniel
John
Jackson.
Johnson.
He was the he was the real villain in this one, because he stopped him like 4 times for stupid stuff.
He really did.
So me and
The
my wife are
exposition was
watching it
unreal.
together, and she's just like, he is the worst. I'm so happy he dies later.
They wrote him out too, and it was quick. It was a very that's yet another Star Trek: The Next Generation comp you could make. Is Tasha Yar made it like, halfway through season 1 or whatever it was, and they're like, and she's like, nah, I think I can do better in movies. I got this Pet Cemetery gig lined up. And then they write her off the show in like the lamest way possible. It's like gone down in history. That's how terrible like that death episode was. And I seem to remember his being equally as lame. Like it was just kind of pointless. And he was like, oh, I guess I should have kept that job. The royalties have been pretty sweet. It really like that this show ran for like what, 9 seasons? Like SG1, just SG1.
Yeah, and then they had the spinoff with
right.
SG Atlantis was after that.
And all of the SG1 characters showed up at one point or another on that show to kick it off. I think they did the backdoor pilot thing, as a matter of fact, for Atlantis. One of the later, there was some overlap between SG1 and Atlantis on primetime television. So which like season 7-ish overlapped into Atlantis episode 1.
Which is just smart television. I mean, they did in the Arrowverse with Flash. Yeah. He first showed up in Arrow before they started the Flash series. And it's to give it that rub. If you want to go back to wrestling terms, to give them that rub. Like, hey, this is the next best thing.
Dude, nobody wants to go back to wrestling terms. This is best of worst stuff. This ain't WWE. Now they're going to sue us.
They're never going to sue us.
They're not going to sue us. Never. Sue us. They don't even know. No, maybe we'll do the best of worst of WrestleMania someday. We'll get your hopes up.
Woohoo!
Right.
We could do that on Unmuted.